Good afternoon, everyone. If everybody's ready here. My name is Gina Ford. I'm the Deputy Communications Director for the County Executive's Office. We are here this afternoon, and I thank you for coming. Obviously, you see 210 in the background. You're aware of a very tragic set of circumstances that occurred on the evening of December 30th, in which a family of 5 was involved in a collision, claiming the lives of 3 children. While that was certainly a very tragic set of circumstances, we know that 210 has been a source of concern for many residents in this community and people who travel this road daily. So ultimately, the county executive brought us here today because she would like to allow the chief to bring an update as far as the police department's efforts, as well as discussing what our hopes are for the community and our plans for this upcoming legislative session, as well as the one previously. So we will go in this order. It'll be County Executive Angela Alsobrooks, Police Chief Hank Stawinski. There will be Senator Obi Patterson, Delegate Chris Valderrama, Councilwoman Monique Anderson Walker, and then Community Member Ron Weiss, in that order, followed by which we will take questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank you all for coming out today as I stand with many of my colleagues this afternoon to discuss our concerns relating to the safety on Route 210. These are concerns expressed not only by our community, by motorists, and also pedestrians who travel this road every day. As you know, on December 30th, in the evening, a family was traveling on 210. 2 parents, along with 3 absolutely beautiful children, Alexander and Rosalie, who were twins, 5-year-old twins, and their brother Isaac, a 1-year-old baby, were in the car actually headed home from a worship service when their car was in a collision with someone who was suspected of being under the influence at the time. And as a result of that accident, those 3 children were killed on this road behind us, and their parents are still recovering. To say to you that to wake up in 2019 for these parents and to wake up without their babies is the unspeakable, really is an understatement. And so today, those parents and their family members and our entire community is continuing to grieve not only the loss of these babies, but we have had way too many similar losses on Route 210. There have been so many grieving families, many of whom I have interacted with after a tragic accident has happened on this very road. And so we're here this afternoon. We believe that it's important to come together to send the message that it is not business as usual on Route 210, that we are bringing together all of our collective efforts. We're continuing to work on Route 210 to make sure that no other baby or parent or family member loses their lives on this road. What I should say is I am joined today with colleagues. I want to thank Delegate Chris Valderrama, who has really been a staunch advocate of changes on this road, who was courageous enough to introduce legislation in Annapolis during the last legislative session that yielded a speed camera on this road. We will continue to work with Delegate Valderrama. That session will open again next week, and she is introducing legislation that will allow us to move that speed camera on this road to other points and locations, and we'll also ask for additional speed cameras along this road. What we want everyone to understand, and it is important to send the message, is we are going to enforce the traffic laws on Route 10 like never before. And so we want everyone to be very vigilant. If you are on this road and you are speeding, you are under the influence of anything, alcohol, drugs, you are distracted in any way, we're going to be looking for you. We're going to be looking for you. I'm here with Chief Stawinski, who will tell you that we've increased our activity on this road every year for the last 3 years. Every year for the last 3 years, and we're going to continue. We're also joined by our county council members today, our senator who will speak from this area, as well as a few of our citizens and activists in this area. And we'll be combining our efforts to make sure that we continue to make this road safer. But I should also say to you that no amount of enforcement will matter unless the community accepts its responsibility as well. We have to change the behavior of motorists who travel on this road. Simply stopping a motorist, putting out speed cameras, putting all of our resources through police cars and other things on this road will not have the intended effect unless everyone understands that they have a responsibility as well to slow down, to be more careful, to remember that it is our neighbors who are traveling on this road. It is our family members who are traveling on this road. As we go to work and come home, it's our loved ones who travel on this road. And so we all have a responsibility to change our conduct as we drive and travel on this road. And so we have some who will be speaking today. We'll share a few comments. I'm going to turn it over in just a few moments to Chief Stawinski, who will share with you what our enforced efforts will look like. But I want it to be known again that we will not stop until we make this road. This is a death trap. That should not be so. We all have a responsibility. The county does. This is a state road. This is a state road. And so that's important as well, that we will be working with the governor and be working with the state, who also has a responsibility to make sure that our families are safe when they drive on this road. So I want to turn it over now to Chief Stawinski.
Thank you, County Executive. Begin by saying that policing is an industry that expresses itself in numbers, but this isn't about numbers. This tragedy impacts first and foremost this family, and our thoughts and prayers continue to be with them. And I want to thank Major Smith for continuing to reach out and talking to them and providing whatever assistance we can as a public safety entity. I also want to send my thanks and gratitude to the men and women of Fire EMS and Chief Barksdale, who were part of trying to address this tragedy, and enough can't be said about the good work that they've been doing as well. Since 2015, fatal collisions have been a front page issue for the Prince George's County Police Department. That's when we began tracking it the same way we track both property crime and violent crime, and we've had success. But the reality is, and the numbers are here, each year the aggregate number of accidents has remained largely the same, despite the fact that in the last 3 years we've gone from more than 3,600 traffic stops to 5,600 traffic stops to 2018 more than 6,400 traffic stops. And I want you to know that the men and women of the Prince George's County Police Department issued more than 10,000 citations in those 6,400 traffic stops, made more than 70 arrests, and yet we still have this level of collision, this level of tragedy, if we look back to the events of just last week. And I also want to send my thanks out to 3 of our officers who last year were injured while enforcing the traffic laws on 210. We will continue 3 initiatives that we have been carrying forward for the last 3 years that has resulted in these numbers. The first is our arc light, which involves our aviation component, where we're targeting aggressive driving, we're targeting rocket bikes, and we're targeting excessive speed and using that aviation component to our advantage. We will be expanding that, and I want to thank the county executive, the county council for their support as we have been able to expand our aviation capacity in the last year. We'll continue to do taking hazards off the roadway, which is targeted particularly at distracted driving. And ladies and gentlemen, I can't say strongly enough, please put the smartphone down. There's nothing going on that phone that's more important than driving and being responsible for the actions of yourself and that vehicle. Distracted driving is one of the largest issues that we face, and we will continue aggressive DWI enforcement. We have conducted checkpoints on this road, which is difficult in and of itself. We've also conducted roving patrol. In point of fact, the Friday before this tragedy, 6 officers worked here doing DWI enforcement. But this county executive has made it clear to me that we'll continue this trend. So in 2019, you will see more traffic stops, you'll see more citations, but I also want to pause and thank Ron Weiss, Sarah Cavett is here, Reverend Screen. I want to thank the people who have been working with me for more than a dozen years as we built District 7 to address the growing needs of South County. I want to thank the people who have made this an issue worth championing and who are standing with us today. And I want to thank now Senator Patterson, his work as a council member on this issue. I want to thank our new council members, and I want to thank Delegate Valderrama, again, who's been a strong advocate on these issues all along. The men and women of this institution will remain committed to driving these numbers down. We will remain committed to aggressive enforcement, But I am going to end here and ask that we all pause. We all examine our driving behavior. We think about that smartphone. We think about the consequences of a little bit of distracted driving. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to tell you something. I've driven priority through Prince George's County for 26 years. It's going to end up a few seconds more or less. But the lives that you're putting in jeopardy through the speed and the lane changes, it simply isn't worth it. And my prayer for 2019 is that we have no fatal collisions this year. But I need all of us, because we know that the Lord doesn't step in and make things happen. He works through us. I'm asking all of you, and I'm asking my community, our community, another lifelong Prince Georgian, I'm asking our community to pause. Not just about 210, throughout Prince George's County. Slow down, put the phone down, and think about what could really happen to people who matter that you don't know before you engage in that kind of driving conduct. And with that, I will just say thank you for your time, thank you for your attention, thank you to everyone who, again, is working alongside of us year over year to make this a better set of circumstances. And I will conclude my remarks there.
All right, good afternoon. Thank all of you so very much for being here this afternoon. And certainly we want to thank our county executive, Ms. Alsobrooks, for stepping up to the plate and coming out and saying that she's going to put some resources to help with this effort. And surely I want to extend my condolences to all the family members that was involved in this very tragic accident. It was noted earlier that 210 is a state road. I want to say that more than one. 210 is a state highway, which simply means we need state government to step up to the plate and provide resources down here to help us with what I will consider saying today, that 210 is a crisis and we need help, and we need to start at the very top, the governor on down to the local officials, to work as a team to do what we know we can do collectively to change the mindset and the behavior on 210. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Delegate Valderrama, one of the representatives here in Legislative District 26. I just want to say, I'll keep it brief. I know our county exec and the chief have said a lot, and that everything they've said is to the point. I do want to personally thank the chief and the county exec for personally putting this press conference together to let the community know and the state know how important this issue is. It was a hell of a fight in the last legislative session to get House Bill 175 passed. For those of you who may not know, when I say we, the Prince George's delegation and the State House, we were able to get one camera. Now, as ineffective as that sounds, one is better than none. The idea of the legislation that I plan to introduce in this upcoming session beginning next week, the idea is three things. One is to possibly and hopefully have a roving camera so that drivers are not expecting the speed camera in one location. We all know that that defeats the purpose of the whole idea of this legislation. The second is to try and put more than one camera in non-intersections, because people tend to speed more so and slow down at the intersections. The third issue was to also make sure, and I'm probably going to have to defer to Mr. Ron Weiss on that, but I'll get back to that. But my whole point of this was just to emphasize how important this issue was, or is, I should say, and that it's not the end of it. I can tell you when the legislative session began last year and I introduced this legislation, you can't imagine how much opposition I got from around my colleagues in the state, not because of who I am, but because of the issue. And I think a lot of you know, when people hear speed cameras, they hear money generator. And the first thing I said to my colleagues was, if it's a money generator, so be it. Slow down. So with that said, the whole point of this is to save lives. I want to give my condolences to the Mejia family and all the families that have lost a loved one on 210. This is not the end of the fight. This is just the beginning, and it is my privilege and honor to have been sponsor of this legislation, but I also want to give kudos to my Prince George's House delegation that helped me move this bill last year, and to our former chairman, Delegate Jay Walker. So with that said, I'm sure we'll be taking questions and answers later. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Monique Anderson Walker. I'm a county council member representing this district. I'm here with Calvin Hawkins, who's one of our at-large members, and we want to extend certainly our thanks for you all coming today to highlight some of the issues that have plagued 210. We often say it's become the notorious 210, not just for the accident that was so tragic and occurred on the 30th of December, ending the lives of 3 young people who didn't get to see 2019. I'm sure they were the light of their family's life. There's no question. And there's so many others that have been lost on this road. We want to change the culture, maybe change our driving culture on 210. It's an unusual stretch, but it's something that needs to be addressed. I'm grateful to be a part of such a wonderful team with our county executive, who is strong and very determined to make sure that she puts forth an effort that's going to see great results. I'm looking forward to working in conjunction with you, certainly with Stawinski, of course our delegates, and county council members, as well as our community people. Reverend Screen, who has been a stalwart in fighting for 210 legislation to get us to slow down, as well as Ron Weiss, who's been there right with them and focused on all issues relating to it. So again, thank you so much for coming today. We extend our condolences to the families, all of whom have lost lives in 210, and we look forward to making sure that 2019 is going to be phenomenal and safe.
I'm Ron Weiss, and I'm glad to see all of you here. We're all here to save lives. The tragic death of 3 children points out that you don't have to live here to be involved in a fatal crash on 210. But the people who live here, like me, and think 210 is our main street, take all the fatalities on Indian Head Highway very personally. The community of people who live around 210 have uniquely banded together, working with our government to reduce the risk of driving on what AAA says is the deadliest highway in the region. And we've made significant progress, but the effort must continue until we no longer have to come together like this to mourn additional deaths. Police are out in force. The state highway is changing the first of several intersections into interchanges and making near-term improvements to lighting and signs. Our legislators have approved the first speed camera, has been mentioned, on a high-speed highway that's not in a work zone or speed zone. Our community is increasingly aware of the risks of irresponsible driving. We even have our middle school students involved in getting us to drive safely. But as been mentioned, we need to do more, and we need to do it faster. An already overburdened highway will get even more overburdened as the population in areas served by 210 dramatically increases. But there's no plan to increase 210 capacity by adding lanes. The current plan will improve failing road conditions, but only to approaching unstable flow conditions. There's not even funding for the remaining intersection upgrades. And it takes many years from the time we find funding until we see actual construction. The plan that we have removes traffic signals and increases the length of straightaways without signals. Speeding drivers will therefore be unimpeded by red lights. There's no single magic bullet to make Indian Head Highway safe, but I know that saving lives on 210 takes even more than construction and enforcement. It takes changing behavior. My behavior, your behavior. Our cars aren't failing. The highway doesn't crash into us. The police don't drive our cars. The laws can't stop us from doing dumb things. We need to be better drivers. It's going to take a long time for us to change, but with a great deal of effort over a generation, we've changed the behavior and decreased smoking and increased seatbelt use. It can be done. Behavior can be changed. We must make this same kind of sustained effort to save our children's lives. Thank you.
Okay, and with that, we'll take a few questions.
Can you update us on what's happening with the possibility of arrest for the man who was and where that investigation is now?
I want to extend my thanks to our new state's attorney, Aisha Braveboy, and her team. They have been working diligently, daily, since this event. Our own Special Operations Division collaborating with them, and I will defer to our state's attorney, but she has taken a new look at how we go about doing this, and I'm expecting her to be able to announce something in the near future, not to get ahead of our state's attorney, but I want the community to know how hard State's Attorney Braveboy has been working on that very issue, and we've been collaborating with her since this occurred.
Delegate Valderrama, is there going to be discussion working with officials in Charles County during that Route 2 campaign south as well in terms of instead of this?
Yes, thank you for that question. And that was my third point in my earlier remarks. The third point was that we want to try and make sure the cameras are not just going in one direction, which it currently is now in the south direction. As far as another point to your question about my Charles County colleagues, I won't name names, but there were a certain few colleagues who were adamant about why is it in that location, it's affecting my constituents. And I said, your constituents are my constituents. We're all in this state. So having said that, there will be communication, because just so you know, for further clarity, the bill that we passed out of the House delegation has to go to a standing committee, which is the Environment and Transportation Committee, which is composed of colleagues from all over the state. So I was fighting, we were fighting a whole committee. There were maybe a handful or less that were in support of our bill, but we got it done. So yes, there will be further communication with Charles County.
Talk to us back on this subject of charges, please. Just a little bit. Help educate us on the complexities of putting together an investigation like this and why it is not charged immediately.
Okay, so there's a substantive difference between investigating a traffic report and perhaps issuing some citations as a result of that, and investigating a fatal collision. We have experienced and highly trained crash investigators, but they have to be thought of as police detectives, not as crash investigators. And so there are very complex digital record-keeping systems in cars today. There is obviously the evidence associated with blood alcohol that has to be examined. There is statements taken from witnesses, people who called 911, first responders. All of those things have to be aggregated. And what we don't want is to repeat a tragedy that occurred here some 2 decades ago where, and there's the Prince George's County Police right now. Thank you. What we don't want is a tragedy that occurred a couple decades ago where we charged too quickly and the individual paid the fines associated with those traffic charges, and then any further charges would have constituted double jeopardy, and we lost the opportunity to hold somebody accountable for killing someone. We will never repeat that. And so if you will look into the recent history with these issues, you'll find that in every case we've had a fatal collision, the Prince George's County Police, our former state's attorney, has collaborated and charged and held people accountable, but we've done that in a responsible way. And again, these are sophisticated investigations. It's not as simple as this collision, that collision, and a traffic citation. And our primary focus on that, right, coming back to where I started, is it's not numbers. This family's lost 3 children. We're never going to take an opportunity to move expeditiously to address an unfounded concern about holding people accountable and put ourselves in a position where we might not help that family bring something as tragic as this to a conclusion. That's where our mind is. That's where I know our state's attorney's mind is. So we're working diligently, we're working aggressively, we're looking at new ways of doing that with this new state's attorney. But at the end of the day, again, this community has seen me time and time again come forward, provide the facts as soon as I have the facts, and I am assuring you and I'm assuring my entire community once again, you will see the individual responsible is held accountable, but our investigators and the state's attorney's office will be completely confident that that is a case where we will not make a misstep, we will hold the person accountable, and we will do our level best to bring some peace of mind and justice to his family.
Chief Keelan was driving in the meantime. Is he still driving, or what is the case?
So under Maryland state law, his license has been suspended. He is able to drive to and from work, and that's the extent, according to Maryland law, of what he can do. And I think you had a question?
We have a related question. Is your response to the lawsuit by 4 police officers against the department alleging discrimination?
And actually, I'm sorry, you know what, and actually, since we're here to discuss this particular issue, we will not be going into that matter. Does anybody else have a related question?
Regarding the DUI aspect of this, some folks might say that that could have happened on any county road. Was there something about this particular road that factored into this incident, or is it more to bring awareness to the concerns here?
So I think what I will say in response to that is that the highway infrastructure on 210 lends itself to poor outcomes, right? We see that reflected in the accident numbers despite the increased enforcement. We see that in the fatal collisions. Last year we had 8 fatal collisions resulting in 8 deaths. In 2018, I'm sorry, that was 2017. In 2018 we had 3 fatal collisions, but unfortunately resulting in 5 deaths. So the highway infrastructure contributes to the bad outcomes. And that's why I'm so pleased to have so many representatives here working with our new county executive to take this issue forward and to bring about the kind of infrastructure improvements that can lead to better outcomes should there be a collision. And good highway safety engineering is fundamental to that.
Chief, you said that the driver right now is able to drive from and to work. What would you say to some people at home that would be a little bit concerned that this driver is still using the state's
Okay, so we operate within due process, right? We have laws that afford us the opportunity to take action without moving to complete prosecution. But as I've said before, we have to balance that, and the legislature balanced that when they created that provision. But we have to balance that against the importance of getting that case correct and making certain that we get justice for this family. And so nothing is as straightforward and simple as it may seem, but we are working diligently to bring this to a conclusion as quickly as possible, as I've already said. And again, I have a tremendous amount of confidence in our new state's attorney as we work towards different resolutions. And quite frankly, out of this grow other issues for us all to collaborate on in the same way that we are today focused on this roadway. But what about the larger issues associated with drunk driving and enforcement? All, I think, fertile conversation going forward for us.
So there was a question about infrastructure. I think this is an important time to speak about the fact that, again, it should be noted that this is a state road. And so the improvements that need to be made on this road, this is a road that has been long neglected. And we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars in repairs that have not been made on this road because this is a state-maintained road. And so as we approach Annapolis next week, and the county submitted just this morning its list of transportation priorities to the state. We did submit 210, again, as a priority, as we have each year. And so I want to thank Senator Patterson in advance and thank Delegate Valderrama and the entire delegation who will be going to Annapolis this week to continue to make the case for improved conditions on this road and a serious investment in the infrastructure and the needs that we have on Route 210. Well, so 2 points to that. Yes, we have in our transportation priorities list that we submitted to the state, we did include other intersections and roads other than 210. But 210 remains at the top of that list each year. And in terms of the conceded, citizens voted just this past election cycle to ensure that the dollars that came from the casino would go to a lockbox for education. That's not just our casino, but that's casinos across the state. And what we should also mention as we talk about those dollars that go into that lockbox is that Prince George's County contributes disproportionately to the lockbox because of the funds that are generated here at MGM. And so we are looking forward to dedicating those funds to education as promised. And our voters had an opportunity to weigh in, and they have said very clearly that they want the dollars from the casinos throughout the state to be designated exclusively for education. And so it is going to be the responsibility of the state to provide those additional infrastructure dollars that we need to repair the roads that are state-maintained roads.
Okay, if nothing else, we thank you all for coming.